mess around and find out is a light way of putting it. Ex-pros are realising that their words come back to them. Between the HMRC Of Football Podcast and Virgil van Dijk putting it on Wayne Rooney's toes, ex-pros with podcasts or on podcasts or who've turned to punditry are realising that telling stories of the past or held themselves to high standards in the past and holding players of the current generation to different standards will still catch up to them. I want to discuss it here with you over a brew. It's the Sport Tea. So, a lot of you watching this will be Liverpool fans, and you will have probably seen by now Virgil van Dijk's exchange with Wayne Rooney on Amazon Prime after Liverpool beat Real Madrid 1-0 the other day, but you may not know where the original quote from Wayne Rooney came from or what he really said in full, so I just want to read it out for you to start. So on his podcast, The Wayne Rooney Show, which is produced by the wonderful Lizzie Doyle, so I'll say no bad words about that, and John Gibbons was on it recently as well, so I'm sure that was a fantastic episode. But Wayne Rooney said, Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah, they've signed new deals, but I don't think they've really led that team this season. I think body language tells you a lot, and I think we're seeing slightly different body language from the two of them. They are the top two players in that team, and if their body language is not right, that affects everybody else. A couple of things I don't necessarily agree with here. I often hate it really when people turn into body language experts, and no less former pros. And by the way, no less a former pro like Wayne Rooney. Rooney had a massively successful career at Manchester United, won all there is to win at Manchester United, and still there'd be games where, by the way, Wayne Rooney could score, goals from nowhere and pull performances out of his arse to all intents and purposes, and yet sometimes his body language wasn't good. One of my favourite Wayne Rooney highlights, speaking as an opposition fan, is one where he's arguing with the referees, throwing his arms up in the air, he's doing all these things that it feels like exclusively ex-professionals don't like seeing from current footballers now, and then he turns away from the referee and just bangs in a volley against Newcastle, and an incredible highlight for Wayne Rooney, but one where his body language, you would say, wasn't necessarily right, and yet it still led to a moment of success. So this over-analysis of body language, as Virgil van Dijk describes it, is just over the top. A couple of things wrong within this, the insinuation, Virgil van Dijk says most of this in the quote. You don't need me to say this, and I don't need to be the person to stick up with Virgil van Dijk or Mo Salah because they can do that for themselves, and Arne Slot, of course, later went on and bodied Rooney as well. But this insinuation that they signed new deals and then just sort of down tools, that was it, because we've got our new deals, now we've got the deals that, see us into our twilight years. That's not true at all. You can see that this has hurt Virgil van Dijk. I would imagine that is where the change in body language has come from, is that your body language is obviously going to change from winning loads of football matches, from winning the league title, to suddenly losing 4 or 5 games in a row. That's absolutely fair. You don't do all of your leading as a captain on the pitch. That's the thing that Wayne Rooney will know for sure from times that he was captain. It's the thing he'll know from the captains that he worked with too, that what you see on the pitch is, not even half of the battle. It's probably 1/10 of the battle, and then 9/10 is done in dressing rooms, on training grounds and things like that, holding people consistently to the highest standards. And Mo Salah, his form has dropped off this season. We know there are other circumstances that you can bring into this as well, and everybody hates to hear the Diogo Jota thing used as an excuse. I hate the idea that people are putting it into the category of an excuse. It's a reason. It could be a reason why Mo Salah's body language has been different this season. It could be a reason why Virgil van Dijk's body language has been different this season. Nobody is qualified enough besides those two people to say whether that has resulted in a change in their body language. So that is again another reason why I don't like the that assessment of the body language. And, that idea that it plays into how they lead on a football pitch. Bruno Fernandes is Manchester United's best player, I believe. His body language is an absolute disgrace at times, the way he captains that football club. And as far as I can see, I've never seen Wayne Rooney call him out publicly, whether that was just because Rooney didn't have his podcast and the platform at the time. But, Virgil references that there's so many platforms around these days and so many ex-professionals that get hired onto these platforms to talk, by the way. And I have been on our platform recently with an ex-professional who is somebody who feels like they can say whatever they want and not necessarily find out, and I'm pleased that some people are assessing that as I made Jamie O'Hara find that out on the day, but I'm just one guy. I'll do the Kermit the Frog meme to that. But this idea that what I sort of put in the teaser for this episode there, that nostalgia is the thief of joy, is one thing that I particularly want to focus on with this, because I see this not only in football coverage but in basketball coverage too, where ex-professionals go onto television, go onto podcasts and things like that, and criticise current players and the way that current players deal with things. And a lot of the time it's because they're reaching, it's because they feel like they want to have a strong opinion on something. It gets more clicks and airtime for pundits. I think it's the reason why people like Jamie O'Hara and even Chris Sutton, I think, is the expert at this, are still in jobs, is because they're effectively rage baiters. They're people who don't necessarily believe in the opinions that they say, but they do it because they know it's going to keep them in jobs, they know it's going to get them airtime, all these kinds of things. I'm not necessarily saying that Wayne Rooney is that way. I think generally Wayne Rooney has probably been under opinionated in most of his time on air as a pundit and things, but he's got his own show, and I think he's reached for this opinion, to be honest. So again, I mentioned before that one of my favourite Wayne Rooney highlights was a time where his body language wasn't good. I'm sure there were a million times on a football pitch that I didn't even see where Wayne Rooney's body language wasn't up to scratch, or what ex-professionals maybe at the time would call not up to scratch, because they believe they always did it better in their day. And that's the problem, is everyone believes they did things better in their day. Everybody believes that everything about modern football, every single strand of modern football, is not better than the way that it used to be. Like, just because there are so many things that are bad about modern football, and I completely believe that, by the way. And I'm somebody who, of course, subscribes to the odd element of nostalgia, but I can also see, as everything is imbalanced, that sometimes where nostalgia is the thief of joy. And I don't know whether that's a phrase that goes around. I know the original phrase is comparison is the thief of joy, but I believe that the same thing applies there, because you're basically comparing the standards that you held. And I see ex-United players do this so often, by the way, this idea that the Alex Ferguson era was just this period of wall-to-wall excellence, and there was never a time where anybody slacked off, and the standards were always held so high because players like Roy Keane and Gary Neville always insisted. So I'm sure there were times where, and I know, by the way, there were times where Roy Keane and Gary Neville weren't professional, their body language was bad, or they were doing something on the pitch that was to the detriment of the team and their younger teammates, and not a good example for other people. I mean, Roy Keane, bloody hell, you don't even have to look very far to the examples of times that Roy Keane wasn't a good example for younger teammates. So players constantly being held to this unrealistic standard because we believe it's what the standard used to be like. It's not the case. The standard, at some point, everything is in balance. We used to believe we got purer footballers from the the 80s and 70s and stuff like that, and people who were, it was raw technique back then. It wasn't all about its athleticism, because they ate chippies on the bus home and drank cans. And I wouldn't want my footballers now necessarily to eat chippies and drink cans. It'd be funny in moderation or isolation. It's part of the reason I like non-league football, is that's a level where you can still do that, and you can go into it with the expectation that the football I'm going to see here is not the best football that I'm ever going to watch. But when I go to Anfield and I'm watching Liverpool compete for Champions Leagues and Premier League titles and things like that, I don't want to believe that Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah are getting on the bus after and having a chippy, or that Van Dijk's having cans or something like that after. By all means, do it in moments of celebration, but after every game is over the top. And that was a thing about old school football that was maybe good in some regards, but is bad in other regards. We've got a better product because most athletes now really look after themselves. Sports science has come along so far, and there's so many bad things about modern football, as I say, but I think sometimes we can do the comparison and the nostalgia so much that we forget how far the game has come as well. The quality of football now is so much more. And, generally, I will sort of be a little bit hypocritical of my original point here. It's because these footballs are held to a higher standard as well. There's wall-to-wall coverage of football, 24-hour coverage on rolling sports news channels. There's social media. There's you've seen it in the past where players been caught out smoking vapes or hookah pipes and stuff like that, because that's the thing now. Everyone sees a footballer, gets a camera phone out, suddenly your business is out there on the internet, and there'll be loads who don't want to get caught up in that because they want to maintain this sort of professional standard. Wayne Rooney, when he first started his football career, didn't have to worry about that. Wayne Rooney during his peak didn't even have to worry about that. Graham Souness, just to pull an ex-pundit who I think sometimes is a little bit of overcritical about current generation players, didn't have to worry about camera phones or social media or any of these kinds of things. If he was having a bad time or a bad performance, there'd maybe be a write-up in a newspaper or something on the radio or something about him. But I can't imagine that the criticism was as all-consuming as it is now. So, like, believing that it was constantly better, like, in the past is something that, like, I feel like the human brain is conditioned to do. Like, we tend to remember memories in the past and remember them more fondly because we want to cut out the bad in it. And I'm sure if you sat down and basically told Wayne Rooney to pack in his football career into 5 minutes, he'd just tell you all the good points. He wouldn't tell you bad points. He wouldn't tell you about, I mean, there's a story from Paul Gascoigne recently. I don't know the validity of this. And again, that's probably me being a little bit hypocritical there because I don't have to be held to account for whether a Paul Gascoigne story that I see is true or not. But apparently he went into the Everton dressing room and said, like, you know, who's out tonight? And Wayne Rooney said he wasn't. That's a young Wayne Rooney playing for the under-21s at Everton. So, like, you know, again, this idea like, oh, you just like constantly were held to higher standards, and when you played for a team like Manchester United and Alex Ferguson as the manager, like it was all about excellence every single day. Like, no, it wasn't. There were moments where you slipped up. There were moments where you probably did go on a night out and were a bit hungover in training the next day, or hungover on the morning of a match, and you probably still turned up and still performed, or there'd be times where you didn't and you weren't necessarily held to account for it by ex-professionals because the coverage wasn't as wall-to-wall, and as Virgil van Dijk says, there wasn't platforms all over the place where you were held to these high standards. So Liverpool have been worse this season after a better start. They've hopefully turned it around with 2 wins this week now. Virgil van Dijk has been a great captain throughout so much of this, a great captain throughout, again, the loss of Diogo Jota, which isn't an excuse. And if you say it's an excuse, by the way, then or you're like, oh, people shouldn't be using it as an excuse. Like, you're the problem there. The people who are describing it as a reason to protect the footballers that we love are not the problem there. Virgil van Dijk is suffering from this loss of his mate. So if his body language does look slightly different this season, or if his body language looks different because Liverpool have lost 4 or 5 games in a row, then I think we should allow these players a lot more leeway. So yeah. HMRC Of Football Podcast, by the way, I want to give a big shout out to them, to Karel Prince. I actually saw him at an NBA event with Tops in London recently. Way taller in real life. It's the funny thing about social media is that you can't necessarily tell how tall these people are. And I think sometimes the way he holds his phone makes him look like he's a little bit shorter than he is. But again, like this idea that there's these ex-professionals going on these podcasts and just like making up like BS stories to make themselves more interesting, or to like hark back to this time that was like so incredible, and like the current era don't do it like we did and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's all bluster, and again, comparison and nostalgia are absolutely the thieves of joy. And I'm pleased that there's people like Karel holding these ex-professionals to account, and I'm pleased that current professionals are holding them to account, because more people should do that. And I have this problem in the NBA where there's been a couple of current professionals who've had to come out and call out people like Shaquille O'Neal and stuff like that, because Shaquille O'Neal is constantly asked for his NBA opinions and constantly on TV talking about current players, and sometimes he's just like downright ignorant about current players and the different struggles they have to go through compared to what he had to go through when he was at his peak. So I think ex-professionals, as Virgil van Dijk says, could do well to allow this current generation a little bit more leeway, especially when they are going through things such as turns of form, such as the loss of close personal friends and things like that. I think they do well to remember that at times, and just like if everything was a bit more balanced and measured, then I think the world of social media and reporting around these things would be a better place. But alas, that is a utopian ideal. So I will leave it at that before we get too meta on this episode of the Sport Tea. Thanks for sharing a brew with me. If you're enjoying these so far, please make sure you do like the videos, that you comment down below and let me know your thoughts on all these things. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I've got a lot of subscribers off the back of that Jamie O'Hara video recently, which has been nice to see. If you are a new subscriber to this YouTube channel, go and check out my Patreon as well. It's not paywalled content there. It's more just supporting me in my freelance journey I recently made. The move to go freelance after being full-time with a podcast called The Anfield Wrap for 9 years. Many of you may know it. It's a brilliant podcast that I'm still very lucky to be a contributor for, but no longer full-time behind the scenes there, because I'm trying to do more of this in front of camera stuff. None of it is perfect. I want to decorate that wall behind me. I want to get better lighting in here. I've just got a little ring light looking at me for now. Microphones, equipment I want to upgrade as I go. being a freelancer. So if you do want to support me in that journey, I'd really appreciate your support over on Patreon. But to be honest, if you don't necessarily want to pay me any money at this stage, as I say, your support in terms of likes, comments, shares, all that good stuff, it means the world to me, and thank you for supporting me in this freelance journey. There'll be a written piece that goes along with this. If you want that delivered into your email inbox, you can sign up to my Substack as well. That will also be available on my Patreon. There'll be a snippet of it in the YouTube description down below, and there'll be all the relevant links there. So make sure you get down in the description, click some of those links, follow me on all my social media at jsexton24, the same as I am here on YouTube. I'm not sure if it's the same on Patreon, but I believe it is. So you'll see the link down in the description anyway. But thanks very much for enjoying a brew here with me on the Sport Tea. This is my little platform to give me the room to talk about these things, to stick up for the footballers that I love, like Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah, and to hold people like Wayne Rooney to account. Me and Karel Prince taking it to these footballers, and hopefully many more, because they get away with murder, some of these lot, for the things they say on podcasts and on the telly. So let's keep holding them to account. Let's stop looking into the past like it was the perfect in everything, because it absolutely wasn't. We still complained about referees then, even when we didn't have VAR. I promise you we did. There was lots of good things about the past, but lots of bad things that I'm pleased we can leave firmly in the past as well. So hopefully we continue to evolve as human beings. Coverage continues to evolve, more independent media and things like that continue to come out of the woodwork and help us evolve, because evolution is good, and ultimately sometimes it does leave things that we like in the past, but it also brings many things that we like into the future. So on that note, I'll leave that with you. Thanks very much for watching. I feel like I'm ranting more and more on this.